Good morning, Alan.
Yes, sir.
Morning, mate. And welcome all to part 3 of Alan Hudson's World Cup Diary. We're going to call this one Anthony Patrick Hudson. You did us proud, son. How are you? You must be very proud, Alan.
Yeah. Obviously, for many reasons, but more importantly, it brought back a lot of memories. And I realised it after the match. I was very nervous beforehand, but I said to Anthony and young Alan that I was more nervous than than when I played against the Germans when they were world champions. But and after the match, I just couldn't sleep. It was like I relived it, and it was. I think it brought it all back to me after the match, and after what he wrote in the Times the day before, that he'd love to be, he'd love the USA to beat England for his dad, which was great, which was kind of made me realise, as we spoke before, that he was living my dream, and it was a dream that really been taken away from me from. My ongoing case with the FA against Sir Alf Ramsey, Don Revie, and the FA itself. As I listened to Roy Keane say England were rubbish, and then Graham Souness took a different angle on it, praising the performance of the USA. But for me, I had a personal interest. So I got to look at it a different way, and I did look at it in a different way, and it kind of it kind of brought back everything that I wanted to do, as all the years before, went into the 90 minutes, and as I watched the game, I was thinking, If anyone was to judge me on watching England play the United States the other night, they'd have said, "I wonder what choose what team that Alan Hudson coached." It would have been the United States, because of the way they played football, and I thought they were terrific. But obviously, it's through my case up into a different. And I'm going to do something on it in the next few days. I'm going to send something over to my lawyer and put that kind of case across, that this is what they've cost me. And although he took a different route to get where he's got, because he failed as a footballer, where I got to the top and got banned and two managers, as we always end the show with, the managers. And subsequently, responsible for what happened to me. But when Alan and I spoke to him after the game on a face call, it was he was kind of overwhelmed with, he couldn't believe that he was standing in a stadium where there'd been 80,000 people, sitting there, responsible or half responsible for such a good performance, which it was. I thought it was a fabulous performance. Over to you.
Again, we look at managers, and managers have a job, and then we have coaches, that the coaches have their role. We're not too sure how much influence the coaches have over the manager, and conversely, but what we can say is Anthony is one of the coaches of the American national team. I wished him all the very best on Messenger hours before the game, and I'll always stand by my words. I actually didn't want England to win, and I told him that, and I wanted the Americans to get something out of the game. If it meant a win, then great, and only because of Anthony. And I know how important it is, because when you do lose, when you do get knocked out, the manager then tends to get sacked. The coaches go with them as well. So, we want that boy to do as well as what he possibly can. If that means beating England, then so be it, because as we said before, blood's thicker than water, and you're my friend, and you're almost like family. Probably talk to you more than I talk to my family. And the one thing that come back to me from Anthony is, and what a polite, what a lovely lad. He doesn't need to messenger me and thank me for the message, but he said, I don't let my dad down. And I think
Well,
that was a
yeah.
massive thing. He said, I hope I do him proud. And I said, Anthony, you do your dad proud. He's very proud of your son.
Well, I think it's that, but I also think it's it people that would listen to it or would read into it wrongly. It's a situation where uh, I was in as a what you have to understand, or people have to understand with my case. It's I was 24 when I was 20, like 22 when I was banned, but I was
21 when you was
20.
banned out.
Well, 20,
Mm,
21, 20, going on
yeah.
22. I was only a young kid, and I got banned. I didn't realize at that time the consequences it would bring later on in life. And but then I was 24 when I was kind of banned again, when Revy took over, and I
Yeah.
played against the Germans, and then I played one more game after that, which we won 5-0 in a European Championship match. So, and then I never played again. So I was kind of kicked out of England, and I ended up in America at the age of 27. And players don't really reach their peak till they're 27, 28
Mm,
in those days. It was a little bit later with people like Teddy Sheringham played on till he was 40, but the game had changed dramatically at that time. Um, but it just brought it all back, and I just couldn't sleep after the game. And I thought of all these things going around your head, what might have been, uh, and I knew that it was kind of. I've always said I say to people about. I remember in 1970 I played against Newcastle, and a namesake, Ray Hudson, who went on loan at the end of the season, which players did to the NASL in them days, and he played for Fort Lauderdale Strikers, and he looked a real good player. And
mm,
I played against him at Newcastle at St James's Park one day, and they called him Rocky. And he looked a right good player. And anyway, he went to Fort Lauderdale, and he was the same age as me, 18, 19. He never came back.
yeah.
He fell in love with Fort Lauderdale, which I did years later, as I did in Tampa Bay, and I wondered if I'd have been loaned out at that time, if I'd have came back, because I fell in love with the country, and but I fell in love with it quite only because I only fell in love with it because I got kicked out of England. Basically, nobody wanted me because of firstly my FA ban, and then being disregarded by uh, whatever he did to me. He kind of cut my legs off, Don Revy. That was it. I was finished, and I was out the door. And then that kind of gives managers after the likes of Terry Neal at Arsenal, it gives them uh, and like the ban with Revy gave him an extra motive to kick me out.
Mm,
They use that as well, and you're forever the bad guy. And that's kind of what carried on. Whereas on the other side of it, you see Anthony's come along, and he hasn't had them hurdles in his way by going into coaching at an early age. Because he didn't make it as a player, he went into coach. He chose to go down that route, and he's done it, and he's ended up where I wanted to get through going a different route. But I couldn't get there because of these people, and that's what we always finish the show. And as I said, it's always a manager. A manager like Waddington can make you, and a manager like Neil can break you. And that's what happened with the England managers, and the same's happening again with Southgate. As we've touched on so many times, and it happened again the other night. I think Roy Keane touched on it. I think Saunders touched on it. I think they're the two shrewdest judges on there. You know, that Southgate's, in a roundabout way, they've said that he's ruining the England team. I mean, they were totally outclassed the other night in the first 45 minutes in particular, and all their best players were basically sitting on the bench.
We've
You know,
said this before on many occasions, Al. Neither of us are safe, and you called him that years ago, Safegate, and it's difficult because Southgate and Safegate it sounds very similar depending on your accent, but he has always played it safe. Your team, when you said you'd be managing the Americans, yes, you would, but if you was managing the England team, we posted up your starting 11 and it would have been Saka on the right, Foden on the left, and Maddison and Jack Grealish in the middle of the park. You would have played Callum Wilson up front with Harry Kane. That to me is a more balanced side. That is a more functional side. I actually can't see what England try and do because I looked at the midfield too of Bellingham and Rice, and I thought, when you play Piggy in the middle, it looked as though Rice was playing piggy in the middle for most of that game. He was standing behind an American lad. He was coming off to the left, to the right. And I thought, the last time I've seen something like that was Ruby when we were playing piggy in the middle on the beach at Weston. And I
yeah.
couldn't believe it. And Bellingham, I keep hearing this. 175 million, the richest player in the World Cup, and I'm going, mate, you've got a better PR agent than COVID.
Yeah.
Unbelievable. I cannot get my head around the incompetence, the stupidity of the English press, and the naivety, and again, I'll use the word stupidity, of all these people that surround the England bubble. I hear Gary Neville, and I've got no time for Gary Neville, but again, he dances round the issue. It's almost like Gareth is like not doing what he should do for the England team with them players on the bench. No, say what you mean, son. Gareth Southgate is letting the nation down because he ain't playing the best players. But nobody will say it. A little bit like Declan Rice on the pitch. He's playing piggy in the middle. They're all jockeying around. Nobody wants to say what they think, Al, because if they do, they know that they'll get the bullet, and they're all a load of shysters. Apart from Keane and Suey.
Well. That's right. I mean, that is the way of the world anyway. That is
Mm,
the way it's always been that way. But it's only really come to the fore because of the coverage now. It's only because we got Sky TV and they're on every minute of the day talking about it, and
yeah.
they're just digging a bigger hole. We've been listening. Me and Alan have been this morning listening to Clinton Morrison talking about football. I mean, my God. We're talking about the World Cup here, and is this a competition that this is not a World Cup? We haven't seen, apart from Mbappe, we haven't seen anyone that's anywhere near world class in this tournament. It's just ridiculous. When you think George Best never kicked a ball in it, they don't. People around the world don't even know about George Best. And every 4 years he couldn't play in it, and yet we got this kind of. I mean, it's trash, really. We were so bad the other night that he makes a change, and you thought, oh my God, he's only going to bring on Foden and Grealish at
Yeah.
last, and he brings on Jordan Henderson, and it's even more negative. It's gone sideways and backwards, and it's kind of hang on to what we got, and it was only because of the US manager kind of half it wasn't fair, but he thought we don't want to lose this in the last kick of the match and we get knocked out. Remember they got a free kick on the right, and he said no, just keep it, don't knock it in the box, and they
Mm,
knocked it and thought, well, we're going to the last match with a chance. Uh, but only because they had played that well, but results hadn't gone their way. I mean, had they played Wales last, if they were going into Tuesday playing Wales, USA, they're through.
yeah.
You know, but that's the way it is. You can't. It's like the FA Cup, getting an easy draw in the FA Cup, I suppose. But um, I mean, getting to the match itself. I mean, I love what Saunders says. Saunders said, he said they're going to kill me. He said I won't be allowed back in Scotland saying what I'm going to say. He said, but you've been running the England team down. He said, but hang on a minute. He says, don't take away from the Americans their display. He said their display was superb. He says they looked like they didn't look like an upcoming team like many of these other teams. I mean, like Cameroon come and went, and these other teams get to a certain stage, and you think, oh, in 8 years, 12 years time, they'll be good nations, and they just disappear.
Mm.
But he said the United States of America, they look like a team with a great pedigree, a great nation of football. Well, that's because all these young players that went over when I was there are all, they're intelligent about the game now. And this kid in midfield who plays with Juventus, the kid that missed a chance.
Yeah, strange haircut, good player.
Oh yeah, good player. And they played the game the way we like it played. Um, they got two players at Fulham who played at the back,
Mm.
which helped them. Um, and the reason it helped them so much because they play against the likes of Harry Kane every week, so they weren't overwhelmed by it. Whereas if they'd have been ordinary American players, they might have been reading the cut-ins and these are the best players in the world. And England went into the match, basically through the group with all these superstars in their team, and they get all of a sudden we sit down afterward and when we analyse the game, we think about the game and we go, hang on a bit, we got Sterling, we hardly see Sterling in the game.
Yeah.
We've got Mason Mount, we hardly see him in the game. We got Saka, hardly see him in the game because the left back played so well.
Mm.
And England didn't play to Saka's strength because he don't get as exactly what you said about he ain't going to play well while he's got Rice running around in midfield
Mm.
because there's nobody to give him the ammunition he needs. Um, so, and then we got Harry Kane through him not getting the kind of service. I mean, if he played him up front for the United States, then they'd have won the other night. There's
100%.
no doubt about, and that's the difference. That's the difference between coaching and management. Um, Go back to my man Waddett, and it would have been quite clear that if you had a jigsaw puzzle, which I always call it, then you say there's something wrong here. Going back to Soreness, if you watch it, you'd have thought that they might have been the Brazilians the other night
Mm.
at one stage. The way they were just toying with England. It was the first 45 minutes. I mean, we sat in the Hudson household here with our American flag up, and we wonder why we're not in front, kind of thing.
Yeah.
It was amazing.
Absolutely. It's that midfield, and it's always been that midfield. Games are won and lost for me in midfield. What makes the team tick, it's that link between the defence and the attack. And you're right, Saka was coming deep, Sterling comes deep. Harry Kane was almost playing centre half at
Yeah,
times. It was like the old quarterback position that you told the Americans, this is what the position is. If you can imagine a quarterback, that's my role within the team. Harry Kane is supposed to be our goal scorer. Jimmy Hogan once said about midfield players, you're like waiters in a restaurant. Your job is to serve the forwards. It was like self-service. It ain't going to work if we keep playing like that. Going back to the Americans, back in 1950 in Belo Horizonte when they beat us, that was a massive shock. This wouldn't have been a massive shock now. The American game has come on leaps and bounds. You look at the Americans, they're buying up Premier League football clubs. America are expanding. I think that the Americans have looked at their national games. The NFL, they do play a few games over in this country, but it's an American game, isn't it? You look at baseball, it's an American game. It's massive, but it's an American game. Ice hockey, it's a North American game. Football's a global game. I don't know whether the Americans have looked at it and thought, you know what, this gives us more kudos globally soccer as we call it, football as the rest of the world calls it, and we've got the World Cup next time in our backyard. So we're going to be putting all out our feelers and doing as best as what we can, and we can now rub shoulders with the big boys. We don't need to feel inferior like we did generations ago.
Well, yeah, I mean, we've touched on this
Mm,
before as well. It's the difference between the NASL and the MSL. It's in our day there was no Sky TV.
yeah,
People in England used to laugh. I remember coming home from Seattle and people would say, "Oh, you're playing in that like Sunday League over there, are you?" I said, "Yeah, I am. Yeah, against Johan Cruyff
yeah,
and Beckenbauer and all that, and George Best. They might be in their 30s, but I mean, look at Lewandowski. He's 35, 36. He's still scoring goals. Ronaldo still scoring goals. So these players were playing in the NASL when they were 32, 33 and this is why the young players over there, but we weren't getting that exposure at that time.
yeah,
There was no exposure. Uh, they wouldn't have soccer on TV in America because they were frightened it would take over from the three main American sports,
yeah,
which were baseball, basketball, and football. And the owners of the big football club, and I knew one of them. I knew one of their sons. George Steinbrenner was one of the biggest owners of New York Giants. Uh, I knew him in Tampa Bay. I knew his son. Uh, I got on well with his son, and he told me one day. He says they won't allow soccer on TV because they've told the TV stations that if they do allow soccer, they'll pull the plug on them. And they're multi. I mean, these billions now they're bringing in to buy football clubs. That was what they were like then,
yeah,
but now they've accepted that soccer now and amazingly, Paul, it's the girls that have done it
yeah,
mainly in
yeah,
the main for them, and rightfully so. Anthony told us a year ago that there's trouble on the American FA because the girls were suing the American
yes,
FA, and
hmm,
they won their case,
yeah,
and rightfully so because they were getting crowds much bigger than what the men were, and what we were. You know, it's an incredible, and every word you just said is true. They have looked at this and said 4 years down the road, this is going to be a different ball game. You know, and it won't be. There won't be none of this in Qatar. With the gay thing and everything else, and all these coloured armbands and all that. You know what it's like in America. It will be one big party. It'll be the greatest world. The next one will be the greatest World Cup. You see the Mexicans. It's going to be in Mexico as well. You see them last night.
yeah.
They're fantastic nations, and the Canadians are going to go there. So three completely different countries, and we were talking about it with my granddaughter yesterday. She's 12 now. She's going to be 16 when that comes around. So it's going to be an incredible. The next World Cup's going to be just blow this one out of the water.
Absolutely, it's going to be deemed the greatest show on earth. I'm sure it will be, because there's no one that can sell anything like the Americans can. I must apologise, I did miss off basketball. That is quite a global game. They do play in a number of other countries, but
Well, they do, but they call that netball as well, don't
yeah,
they?
of course they do.
You
It's like
know,
baseball
but
rounders, isn't it?
but I mean, it's we always say about it, but people in this country they don't realise. I mean, when Anthony was in Colorado, he had that Tim Howard in goal for him. He was like 38. He played at Manchester United, Everton, and all that, and being American, and they said, well, they should be the greatest goalkeepers in the world because Americans they're all about hand coordination, aren't
Mm,
they? They're all basketball and American football. It's all about hand coordination in America. But now it's the other way round. They got players, and we see it the other night. As I said, the kid, the boy, what's his name?
Who for?
McKinney.
The
Uh,
American boy, yeah.
yeah, I mean, him and the captain. Uh, I mean, they're only about 5'6", 5'7". These
I
two
like
lads.
Musa as well. I think he's a fine player.
I think the three of them
Yeah.
complemented each other superbly.
Mm,
As I say, they were just. I think it was just clear to see that they didn't have that thing up front. I mean, they scored a great goal in the first game. Uh, Ware scored a great goal,
yeah, he
but
did.
that was a just where just slipped him through. But
Yeah.
I spoke to Don Shanks after the game, and he said exactly what I said without me saying it. He said when they were getting to they were getting great positions on the edge of the box, but they just had nothing in the box, and they
Mm,
were hitting crosses in. And I think Maguire headed far out, and I kept saying, why they keep crossing it? Because they got nobody in there that
yeah.
can, compete.
Mm,
They should be getting it to the byline and just smashing it in there, and they did it. The one time they done it was when the kid hit it over the bar.
yeah.
And if they'd have went 1-0 up, that would have been game over
Yeah, it
because
was a
they would have
gilt
kept
edge.
the ball for longer spells. I
Mm.
think America and they did. They grew. They grew and grew and grew. And luckily enough, after the break, they didn't do what they did against Wales, and thought they'd done enough only because they knew that they couldn't get beat.
I think
You
it's a
know.
great point that you made out about the American women's team because they have been terrific, arguably the greatest side in the world, and have took that game of football. And when you look at the growth of football in America, you have to admire what the women have done. And you could argue that, okay, it may have happened, but I think that they've speeded up the process, and they really have put women's football on the map. Now the TV companies have got involved. I think you're right with the NASL. They never had that TV network. They wouldn't because pretty much owned by other sports franchises. And I think it was when they lost the 1986 World Cup that went to Mexico. Had America have got that, then I think football would have taken off earlier. But you know how politics and football shouldn't mix. I think it did mix there, and sadly they didn't get it, and it did go to Mexico. But what I do wish is that the women would just be women and everybody should be included. And I think in this next World Cup, they will be included. But all I would say is, please can you leave the rainbow laces? Please can you leave all this rainbow, this sexuality away from football because I'm not interested. I like to watch the women play football. I think they've got some great footballers, but I don't care who's sleeping with who. I don't care who's gay and who's straight and who's don't know what they are and they're gender fluid or they're whatever they are, non-biological. I don't care about that, and I don't see how it's relevant in sport. It might be relevant in an American bar or an English bar if you're going to try and pick up a bird and she says, do you know what, a bat for the other team, so jog on, son. I get that, but I just don't like all of this gay stuff, LGBT. But I don't. I wish they'd leave it alone because it don't sit right for me in football.
Well, yeah. I mean, it's they keep bringing this social media up. It's only like, I mean, if you imagine George Best playing today and being on the greatest player in the world, greatest player on the planet, as they say, and he's knocking about with two Miss Worlds at the same time. That can you imagine what that would be like
Mm,
today in today's climate? I mean, they'll be all how dare he do that, and everything else. And you've only got to look at the boxing, the gay thing in boxing.
mm.
I mean, my goodness, if anyone really, they've only scratched the surface with that. I mean, I could tell you stories about in the boxing game about the gays there, but they don't bring that into it. It's
Exactly.
only because in the game now there's so much money and players are earning so much money.
Mm,
And going back to the girls, I mean, once again, the girls have put us in the shade. You know
Yeah.
what they done in the Euro. I watched the semi final and the final of the Euros of the women's football, and they put us to shame.
Mm.
The way they went from the start, only because again, as we'll finish the show when we do, it's all down to management
Yeah.
again and the coaching. The girl that manages the England women's team, if she managed a men's Euro team, we'd have won it. We would have beat Italy by 3 or 4 if she would have been in charge of us, because she'd have had a completely different way of playing. She'd have said, "Let's go and take these apart," which England did in the Euros, and they weren't favourites to win the Euros, even though it was in this country.
Mm.
You know,
Can
it's
we trade
amazing.
Serena? Can we trade Serena for Gareth? Get Gareth out the way and put Serena in charge of the team. Because
Well, the
again, it's
way,
about philosophy, Alan. Not what you've got between your legs. It's what you've got between your ears.
well, absolutely. I mean, stranger things have happened. And, I mean, me and my Alan here, we talk about my dad, and my dad would turn, and he wouldn't believe, and the same as yours and everybody else is around this age group, wouldn't believe of the what's going on in the world today as regards women. My dad used to say, I remember I wrote my first book to say, behind every great man, there's a woman in the kitchen. uh, and that was what it was all about, and that was the way it was. But now, you can see that this girl that runs that coaches the England team, know what it's all about. She actually knows about the game, and her philosophy is 10 times better than Southgate.
Mm.
And there wouldn't be anything. I wouldn't be anti her being in taking over the men's team, because
Yeah,
it's only about common sense.
absolutely.
And common sense, we've been talking for a couple of years now, and doing this show for a couple of years now,
About four.
and we go, yeah, is it really?
Yeah, 4 or 5 years
Yeah.
we've been doing
Well,
it.
there you go. Oh, don't, you're making me feel old now. Um, oh, actually, I still felt quite old when I thought about 4 years down the road when in America. I thought, oh, here we go again.
Yeah.
But no, it wouldn't be. How the world has changed that much. I mean, they're taking over the TV anyway, haven't they? The girls are now taking over the TV.
Yeah, they
They
have.
are now. There's more females on TV now for talking about the men's game than there are men. So
What's
what's
your
the day?
take
Yeah,
on that, Al? I mean, I
I
like
don't like it.
I like the girls presenting because I think it's a bit of eye candy. So I like that. But when they're commenting, when they're talking about the game, I'll be honest, I don't like it. I want to see players that were good players. Again, I'm not interested in Micah Richards, whatever he's got to say. I listened to Souness because he was a great player. I listened to Keno, great player, and they say it as they see it, and it's common sense. But a lot of these other people, they must have really good agents because they're too woolly and woke for me. I think women concentrate on your women's game, men on the men's game, and let's get some decent pundits there because I'm almost now. I turn it off before the and I was listening. It was all about this bloody armband before the American game, and then it was all about Bellingham's development. I'm thinking, oh my god, I'm almost falling to sleep. And then I see Anthony Hudson and Alan Hudson. I thought, now this is what you want before a game of football. Let's talk about proper football, not this periphery load of crap.
Well, yeah, yeah. I agree entirely. I think I always go back to the Billie Jean King thing with how fantastic she was in women's tennis and what she done for women's tennis, and she never for a minute got involved with the men's game whatsoever.
No,
It was all about her fight for women's rights in tennis, and she won the battle. Was fantastic. What she done for American tennis was incredible. But she never, for 1 minute, poked her nose into the men's game
no.
because she knew it was two completely different sports.
Yep.
She done the gig with Bobby Riggs, was it, or whatever, and she played him for £1 million or something because he had a lot of money, and that was just great PR.
Mm,
But she knew that men couldn't play against women because of the serving and all that. And the same thing applies in football. We're just
of course it does.
talking about it. We're talking about it this morning, the Ron Harris tackle on George Best and all these players rolling around on the floor today. The greatest goal I've ever seen, apart from the Maradona goal, which we will never see another one of them in the World Cup. But the Maradona goal we watched again yesterday. Against England, the best goal, the one goal they should show all the time on TV now is the George Best goal against Ron Harris when he tried to kick him up Manchester High Street,
Yeah.
and he rode the tackle and Benetti come out. He walked round Benetti. How he kept his feet on that ground, I don't know. And he's been scythed across the waist.
Yeah.
And they don't show that today. They should show that. That's an education for young players, but they don't show it. And not they'd rather go on the floor. They would be on the floor because when Ron Harris kicked you, you were kicked. It's as simple as that.
But again, in our
Uh,
day, you didn't want to go on the floor because you felt that you could stand on your feet and score a goal. Whatever level of football that you played, whether he was playing in a playground or school team or Sunday's team or whatever, you wouldn't go down. You didn't want the opponent to know that they got the better of you. But as you say, these days, they've only got a blow on them and they're over. It's ridiculous.
well, they do it all over the field. That's
Yeah,
the horrible thing about it.
exactly.
The damaging thing.
Yeah,
It's
absolutely.
like the thing about they said about the balls in play were only 57 minutes,
Yeah,
and
yeah,
and it's like players today, they're rolling around on the floor, and you think, get up, get on with the game. They did dive in the 60s and the 70s, and the Italians
yeah.
brought it into the game,
Mm,
uh, but they don't. They only they dived in the penalty area. Francis Lee was known for it. Rodney Marsh was known for it.
yeah,
They made a name for themselves. They were trying to get penalties, but that's quite understandable. If a player's going to kick you in the box, then you go down.
yeah.
But you don't drive around on the halfway line for someone who's tackled you from. There ain't no tackling from behind today, anyway.
No, exactly. They've
And
got it
and
good.
and most of the time, Paul, no, it's never mentioned on telly that most of these tackles and people going down injured are because of these boots they wear.
Yeah,
They're paper thin boots, and I see a fella rolling around on the floor. He's got aluminium studs in on plastic boots.
yeah.
Now, some would say most of these injuries is people treading on each other's toes.
Mm.
Now, that couldn't happen in our day.
No, it couldn't. And I think you're right in referencing old bits of film that sadly they don't. Okay, occasionally they have done, but I think we spoke about it on part two of the goals that were scored in the World Cup, and that goal that Pelé scored in the 1958 Cup final. That should be played over and over again. And clips of some of the Brazilians in the 60s, in 1962, Garrincha, for instance. What a fantastic player. Football is about an education, and sadly, we're not being educated, and we should be. It's only focusing on the now. I did hear, I woke up this morning, which is always nice to wake up in the morning, and I put my phone on, and there was a debate on Talk Sport, which, I mean, I've not got the greatest. I do like to listen to some people on Talk Sport, but I think most of them it's more talking shite than sport, to be fair. And
Yeah,
and
yeah,
they were
yeah.
comparing Maradona and Messi and saying who's the goat. And I'm thinking, well, the goat means greatest of all time. So you actually can't have two goats. You can have two goats in a field, and to make more goats, you probably do need two goats. But you can't have two goats in football. One is the greatest of all time, and I think it's very unfair to judge because you look at Di Stefano, you look at Puskás, you look at Best, you look at Cruyff, you look at Maradona. Okay, in modern times, you'd look at Messi, you'd look at Ronaldo, and one or two others. I think Mbappe is going to be at that level. I think he already is at that level. But I think it's really difficult to judge. But when you're looking at Messi, Messi is a great player. I watched him last night and I thought you do look as though the years have caught up with you. You said that about Modric in the last Euros when England played them, and you're absolutely right. And you look at this, it's almost like the OAP's World Cup. Most of the great players, the star players, are over the age of 35, aren't they?
Well, yeah, yeah. But go back a step to what
Mm,
you just spoke about. It's when you're talking about Messi and Maradona, that's just a great example. That's a prime example of what the conversation's been on TV about the greats of all time. What's a rubbish this morning on that Clinton Morrison talking about what would he know about the greats of all time? He never played at that level anyway.
yeah.
Uh, but when you look at, I mean, nobody loves Lionel Messi more than me. I think he's just an incredible talent.
Mm,
He's been a genius for his size and what he went through as a kid and his background and all that. He was never going to kick a ball because of his illness and everything else. It's an incredible story. But in all, the reality of all of this is Lionel Messi and Ronaldo come to that could never have done what Maradona done in Italy.
no,
When he went there, it was the hardest league. That was a hard league. I
it
mean,
was.
that Italy now. If Abrahams can go to Italy and score 20 goals in a season, then I could still go and play there. I think,
Yeah.
you know. Uh, but when Maradona went to Napoli and did what he did there, and the way that I mean, if you watch the film, there was four and five Italians. They're all trying to get their name in the headlines, of trying to put him out of the game.
Yeah.
It was phenomenal over there, and that was apart from what he did off the field as well. His off the field life was unbelievable. I don't even know how he got through 90 minutes, let alone was the best player,
Mm,
and he won him the only title. So Messi couldn't have done that, and there's not an argument. You have these arguments in pubs and other people have a few drinks, and you just say, "Well, go away. Don't even, this is not even an argument. There is no argument there. Maradona, there will never be another Maradona. As good as Messi is and as good as Ronaldo is, they're totally different players. But Maradona, he won he's the only man that's ever won the World Cup on his own.
yeah, he was phenomenal. I mean, for me, I mean, I was a little bit young really to see Pele at his pomp. He was more or less finished by the time I started watching football. But
Well, he was Paul, but he was,
mm,
Pele was probably the greatest player on earth,
yeah,
but he had 10 others around him
exactly.
who weren't bad. They weren't bad.
Mm,
We were talking, Alan and I were talking yesterday about the team that Maradona uh, played in and won the World Cup, and this team, and I don't know who was worse. This is such a poor Argentinian
it
side.
is.
It's incredible.
Yeah.
It is diabolical. But the one that Maradona won, that when England couldn't beat them, they keep making excuses about the hand of God. I blame Shilton for that anyway. He's
Mm,
6'2", Shilton, and Maradona's 5'6", for God's sake, and he's allowed to use his hands, Shilton.
yeah.
He's just slow coming off his line. All right, he cheated, but didn't Thierry Henry,
Yeah.
didn't Gary Lineker cheat against Cameroon when he dived twice?
So did
You
Paul
know,
Scholes against Zenit Petersburg.
Well,
Mm,
absolutely, absolutely. So it's all one way. It's
yeah.
all they've got different coloured eyeballs, haven't they? If
Absolutely.
Maradona had been playing for England when that happened, he would have been a hero.
100%. And what I'll always say
Yeah.
is when you're judging a player on how brilliant that they were, and you're right. I mean, Maradona, for me, Maradona is the greatest player I've ever seen play football. But when you're looking at World Cup teams, teams that have actually won and lifted the Jules Rimet, you look at that team in Brazil that Pele played with, and you're right, you could name probably four, five, six, and that was really before I started watching football that I could name then. Do you know what? I couldn't name you another player that played with Maradona in '86. I think that's how poor the Argentinian side was. I can't name anybody else apart from Diego Maradona who single-handedly, you're absolutely spot on, won them the World Cup, then went over to Napoli, who'd never won anything before. It went for a world record figure. They sold the shirts overnight and raised the money that they'd spent to buy Maradona, and he won him a European Cup. I think it was a UEFA Cup, wasn't it? And
Yeah.
he won the league as well, the first league. And as you say, the stick that kid took was phenomenal. The stick that the other Ronaldo took as well. I mean, he won the World Cup with dodgy knees, didn't he? I mean, what a player he was. Some of these players we just forget. Who else has caught your eye, Al? The Saudi Arabians. I haven't seen much of the World Cup because I've been working, but I've seen bits of it. Certainly the night games. I looked at that game last night and I thought, if Argentina get knocked out, Maradona will be a pauper. And if Argentina get through and he scored a goal, they'll be calling him the GOAT. They are so fickle. But what I'm kind of getting from the social media is that these Saudi Arabians have played a nice brand of football. What's your take on them?
Well, I mean, they were fortunate, really. I mean, they were fortunate that Argentina. I mean, it was like watching a Sunday league game.
Mm,
Uh, the way Saudi were in the first 45 minutes of Argentina, they should have been 5-0 up because they were wide open at the back. And just Argentinians, I wouldn't call them naive. They're not naive because they're all multi-millionaires, so
yeah.
they can't be that stupid. But um, it was just, I think they realised at half time that their game plan weren't going to work, Saudi, and they went, they only had two shots, by the way,
Mm,
Saudi Arabia, and they won 2-1. Uh, they played yesterday. We wanted them to get in front for a different reason,
yeah.
and they missed a penalty, bang on half time. They're very up. I mean, these nations now, they've got lots of ability. They're incredibly fit. They reckon that the geezer that coaches them is a great organizer. Well, he didn't organise the first 45 minutes that good. They do talk. Uh, your word is shite, isn't
Yeah.
it? They do talk that way. Uh, yeah, you know, they're tough teams to beat.
Mm.
There's two or three teams. I said there's going to be a shock list. I'd said beforehand that I didn't fancy Brazil or Argentina, to be quite honest. There's going to be a shock. I think someone's going to come out the pack and win this.
Who's caught your eye? Is it? I mean, I saw a little bit of Spain when I come in from work, and I thought, blimey, they look decent. I'm looking forward to Spain against Germany tonight. The Germans again, Japan doing the Germans. Great result for the Japanese. And if you ever want a nation to come and clean your ground, Japan's the call, isn't it? What great fans they are! They bring their own bin liners with them, don't they? But I am looking forward to Spain. But there's nobody else really apart from Mbappe that I've seen. And I've thought, wow, you look decent. But I am going to sit down with a nice glass of red tonight and watch Spain because I think they've got some. I'm looking forward to looking at this Gavi and Pedri in particular, two midfield players that look real top stars.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I think the great thing about the really great thing about the attraction of the Spanish game today is uh, they won their first game emphatically.
Yeah.
Um, they don't need to beat Germany today. They're under no pressure to win the game.
Mm,
If they come out of it with a draw, they'll be happy, but they'll just go and play.
yeah.
Their manager will say to them, look, there ain't no pressure on you. The pressure's on Germany to get a result here. Let's go and play our football. And they can play. We've seen them, the young kids growing up at Barcelona. These kids can play, and I had to laugh the other night because I was on my way to my friend's pub to watch a game, and just before I left home, Graham Saunders says, "I love the look of this Spanish side." He said they're so talented. I've seen them play. He said, but I don't know where they're going to get a goal from. So I'm away to the pub with my mate, and he said, "Oh, I back Spain." I says, where are they going to get a goal from?" And he flicked over he flicked on his phone. He went, "Well, there's only 10 minutes gone. They're 2-0 up." So they end up winning 7. So, but nobody's thrown that in Graham Tawney's face. I'm afraid if I was on TV, I'd have to have said something to Graham about that. But I think he's a great judge, and he's a great player and a great man. But it would be in fun, because this is football. This is what happens in football. You know, who nobody could say that they're going to score 7 goals. They couldn't score 7 goals. It's just ridiculous. But that's what happens once you get. It's like getting the monkey off his shoulder, isn't it? Once they scored in the first minute, like England against Iran. If England hadn't scored 2 goals in the first 10 minutes, there's no way they'd have won 6-2. Iran would have grew into the game. It's like if England had scored after 2 minutes against the Americans the other night, it would have deflated the Americans. They couldn't have played as well as they played, because England would have grew in stature, and they'd have thought, well, we're through. It would have been that early goal is so crucial in any game, and that's what happened with Spanish, and that's the attraction tonight. It's going to be great to watch Spain because they go out and play. They will have absolutely no pressure on them to win the game, so they go out and play. And by going out and play, they'll be. I think they're certainly to beat Germany on the strength of that, because there ain't no pressure on to win.
Absolutely, and in fairness to Suey and anybody else that said where they're going to get the goals from, it was their Achilles heel in the Euros because they played fantastic football, but they just couldn't finish off the chances. But I
Absolutely.
mean, they certainly found a way to finish off the chances the other night, 7
Yeah.
times, fantastic. So we're looking forward to
Yeah.
that. We're also going to be looking forward to America playing against Iran. 7 o'clock on. Is it? Oh, they're both playing at 7 o'clock.
It is.
Oh, yeah.
They've got her,
Yeah,
haven't
that's a
they?
good. Yeah, I mean that's better really, to be fair, because sometimes when you look at playing these games, you know what you've got to do because the games have been played before. Yeah, yeah. So I'm guessing you're going to be watching Iran versus America rather than Wales versus England, and we're
All
hoping that
day long.
we're hoping that Anthony can see the job through and the Americans can see the job through and qualify. How do you see that game going, Al? Iran first game looked like panel beaters. Second game looked like world beaters. So they are a bit of a funny side, but consistently, America have been a good unit, good solid unit. I think the Americans will smash them.
I said earlier on that, and I said it the other day. It's just a shame that, on a personal level, and I'm going to sound like probably a manager that making an excuse, but it's not an excuse. Uh, it's just the way the matches have turned out that Wales are that poor.
Yeah.
They really are. Even their own manager said, at least he was honest. Southgate would have made an excuse about the performance, but he said they just didn't turn up. None of them individually and collectively, they were hopeless. And I'm afraid that's what they were in the first game, but the USA didn't take advantage of that. They
Mm.
were 1-0 up, and I thought they took their foot off the gas, and Wales put the big fella on up front, threw everything at them, and it come off. But um, I think Iran, as you're saying about Iran, USA know they've got to win this game, where they haven't had to win the first 2 games.
Yes.
They've had to survive. They've had to go into the last game knowing they're not knocked out. So let's hope that, but they got to get someone who can knock it in the net, and it's as simple as that. It's like Argentina last night. They were heading into oblivion, and it's only his left foot that saves them. It wasn't the wonder goal they're talking about, but it was a wonder goal because it was the importance of it.
Mm.
It wasn't magic. They were saying it's magic, but that was just a Lionel Messi shot from outside the box.
Yeah.
And by the way, if it had been Neuer in goal, I think he would have saved it.
Yes.
It's the difference between the goalkeepers.
Yeah, it is, and that's it, isn't it? You can have a shot, a goalie will save it, another goalkeeper goes in the back of the net. Fine margins, and again, if onlys. But you did say that it's a game, it kind of almost is knockout now. But for the Iranians, they actually have one more point because they won their game against Wales. America have got 2 points, so a draw does see Iran go through. Do you think Iran will go and park that bus, and will America break them down? What's vital in that game, and it sounds like you're stating the bleedingly obvious, but to score a goal early for America, that changes everything. If it stays 0-0 later on in the game, it almost comes, you know, a war of attrition, doesn't it? And can you break down that side that you're facing? So let's hope that they can hit the front running and score a goal early.
Well, it's a funny, it's like as going back to Argentina last night. It's like they look doomed.
Mm,
I did still think that Messi, is anyone going to come up with it to be him. Um, and it's like I said to Andy the other day, have a word with Pulisic before you go out there and mention as if this is the biggest game of his life, and that's got to apply
yeah.
against Iran. If anyone can break the defence down, he can do it.
Mm,
I'm very disappointed with him at Chelsea, and his overall performance against Wales weren't good enough. I think he should have been a match winner in that game, and he wasn't.
yeah.
Uh, let's hope he stands up. He was man of the match the other night. He got the man of the match award. So that should, give him a little bit of confidence going into this. And again, one of the coaches has got to say to him, look, this is the biggest game in our history.
Yes.
And it really is. If
Mm,
they're going to hold the next World Cup, they don't want to get knocked out in the group stages of this one.
mm.
You know, it don't bode too well.
No, it doesn't. So let's hope that they can get off to that good start. Because when you look at that free midfield, I think they are very, very competent. You look at Pulisic and then you look at Weah. They've got good quality in that final third. It's just that goal scorer that you alluded to it earlier. Had they have had Harry Kane, they'd have beat the English. Had they had a player like
Yeah,
Harry Kane as a central striker that can score goals, then you'd really fancy them. You could fancy them to
yeah.
go quite deep in the competition because they look a bloody good side, America.
Well, let's hope that this Graham Saunders says before the game where they're going to get a goal from, and they might beat them 7. Who knows? It's a funny
Absolutely.
old game, mate, as our old mate Harry Enfield said. But no, it's you don't know where you're going to get a goal from. I mean, I remember playing my best football at Stoke, and we used to win games 1-0 and 1-0 and 1-0, but we used to have the ball all the time. But we was always confident we'd score
Yeah.
because we knew a goal would come wherever it come from. Mainly, it was Greenhoff. Greenhoff was our best source of scoring valuable goals. But once you got midfield players like the three we just mentioned,
Mm.
who can create, I think I think going into the game they'll be confident they can win. I think we kind of got that vibe the other night talking to Anthony after the game that they're going into this game knowing they can win it.
I think that's the positive attitude that you've got to take into any game, and you've got to go for the win. I mean, I guess if
Yeah.
Iran come out and do play for the draw, it could play into the Americans' hands because I think that if you go out to win and you don't achieve what your aim is, you can at least draw. I think if you go in to draw a game and you don't achieve what you wanted to, you actually get beat. So I always think it's so negative and so bad to go into a game just to try and get a draw. We could do with that referee that you had against Ipswich all those years ago, well, as well, to be fair, couldn't we?
Well, they're gonna have to dig him up. Yeah, they come
Oh,
in handy.
well.
It doesn't matter how you get it as long as you get it. And at the end of the
Yes.
day, you get what you deserve.
Yeah.
And it's like if the Americans had scored the other night, England would have been in a bit of trouble. And
Yeah.
now they've only got 3 points, and America got 4 points. And they go into the last game against Wales, and Wales are going to go, oi, oi, this is a different ball game now.
Yeah.
We if we beat England, but you can't. I think England will beat Wales convincingly. I think this is a poor Wales team.
Mm.
Uh, it's like again Gareth Bale. I mean, these players in the tournament. Gareth Bale's scored a penalty, hasn't he? Messi scored a penalty. Ronaldo scored a penalty. Lewandowski's missed a penalty
Mm,
and he scored his first ever goal. Yes, all the big players in the people that don't know about they've gone to Qatar. These are the best players in the world. Well, they're not the best players in the world now. They're too old, and they've only scored from the penalty spot. Uh, where we see Mbappe stole the game off them yesterday with his two goals. It was just superb. The geezer's on a different level, and he's 23 years of age.
yeah, it's incredible, and
It's what he's going to be. It's not what he is now. He's
yeah.
not the greatest player in the world now, but in the next 2 or 3 years, and his whole attitude, his work ethic, everything about him. Whereas Neymar's got it all wrong, this fella's got it all right. Um, Someone said the other day, with the best thing can happen to Brazil is Neymar not play because
Mm.
they're a better team without him, and there's a lot of truth in that. But if you take Mbappe out the French team, then they're no hopers.
Absolutely. You always say one man doesn't make a team, but one man don't half make a difference to the
Oh, don't
team.
know if help. Yeah,
Where
yeah,
are you going to be watching? Are
absolutely.
you back round Allen's watching the game under the Stars and
No,
Stripes banner?
I'll have the American flag in my flat in Chelsea, overlooking Chelsea football ground. uh, uh, yeah, no, I'll be. I've got a couple of friends coming round to celebrate, hopefully, and hopefully we can onwards and upwards from there.
And will you be
Um,
talking to Anthony before the game and passing on a little bit of advice, some little golden nuggets?
No, his brother will. He listens to
Okay.
his brother more than he listens to me. But I just send him the odd email and just a little. I don't think he. I don't think he. All I said to him the other day in an email is, if you get a chance, just before the kickoff, just remind Pulisic of how important this game is, and they
Mm,
need him.
yeah.
But that little arm around his shoulder and whisper in the ear is tell him how good he is, and to prove it tonight, does might make a difference. We all know that as individuals, and if you've got that little bit of ability, and he has got the ability. When he hit the bar the other night against England,
Yeah.
if he was just a little bit more confident, had a little bit more confidence, I think he might have stolen another yard and put that in. It's all about, as you say, small margins. Uh,
Absolutely.
um, but great. I mean, I was so disappointed. I couldn't sleep after the game the other night. As I say, that's what brought me on to the opening of the show, and I couldn't sleep thinking of, oh my God, if only they'd have scored. But uh, after after sleeping on it, a little bit of sleep, I'm really looking forward to Tuesday, and I think they can win. Yeah.
Well, let's hope you get a good night's sleep tonight, a good night's sleep Monday.
You'd think I was playing, wouldn't you?
Yeah. And let's hope you don't sleep Tuesday, because that would mean that America have won and you're still
Yeah.
brimming and you're going to have a party round the flat in Chelsea with all your pals. And so good luck, Anthony. Good luck to everybody in
Yeah.
America. Good luck, England, as well. Let's hope Southgate actually finds the courage to play the better players. Guessing that he won't,
Well, I
but we
just
can
hope. I
always
don't know.
hope.
I don't know if there's any way that they can meet again. Is there? I don't, because they're gonna get the old Vera Lynn song out, couldn't they? If they could meet them again, if they both go through and somewhere again they clash again. Because if there's a boxing match on TV now, but if it would be like a boxing match next time. If they went in par for the course the other night, America
Yeah,
would have won.
yeah,
But England knew that they didn't have to win, because a point would have done them the other night, and that's what they played for. That's what they got, and they were so unimpressive getting it. And I always think that if I'd have played if my everlasting memory of playing in a World Cup was to play like they did the other night, uh, it wouldn't be. I wouldn't want to come back to England, I wouldn't come back to England with a good frame of mind. It's the biggest stage on earth, and you want to
yeah.
show your best performance, and that if that's the best they can give, it's not good enough.
Absolutely, 100%. And we will be playing the Vera Lynn song if we do meet again. But I guess, if both nations go deep into the tournament, they actually will meet again somewhere along the way. So, hey,
Well,
who
I hope
knows?
so.
Who knows, Al? Till next time, mate. All the best. Hope you have a great night
And
Tuesday.
you, mate.
And thanks for listening, guys. Cheers, Uddy. Speak soon.
Cheers, Paul. Good
Ta-ra,
luck.
mate. Bye-bye now. Bye-bye.
Ta-ra, mate.
Ta-ra.